Standing in my childhood kitchen, clutching the bank statements I had accidentally discovered in Dad's desk drawer, my world crumbled. For 28 years, I believed my sister Sarah was the golden child simply because she was smarter, prettier, more successful. But these documents revealed a devastating truth. While I struggled through college working 3 jobs, my parents had been secretly funding Sarah's entire life. Her MBA, her house down payment, even her wedding. Using money from my deceased grandmother's trust fund that was legally supposed to be split equally between us. Before we dive into this family betrayal that changed everything, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If this story of family favoritism and financial deception hits close to home, smash that like button and subscribe for more shocking family drama stories. Trust me, what happens next will leave you questioning everything about family loyalty and blood bonds. My name is Rebecca Martinez, and I had always accepted my role as the family disappointment. While my sister Sarah graduated summa cum laude from prestigious universities and landed high-paying corporate jobs, I scraped by as a freelance graphic designer, constantly reminded of my poor life choices at every family gathering. The discovery happened purely by accident. Dad had asked me to help him organize his home office while he recovered from minor surgery. Mom was at her book club, and Sarah lived 2 states away in her beautiful suburban home that I secretly envied. As I sorted through decades of paperwork, a manila folder marked estate documents caught my attention. Inside were bank statements, legal documents, and financial records that made my blood run cold. Grandmother Martinez had left a substantial inheritance, $250,000, to be split equally between Sarah and me upon her death 5 years ago. The will was crystal clear. Each granddaughter would receive $125,000 on their 25th birthday. I had never received a single penny. According to the statements, the entire amount had been transferred to an account in Sarah's name. But that was just the beginning. Additional documents revealed a systematic pattern of financial favoritism that spanned years. My parents had secretly funded Sarah's MBA program to the tune of $80,000, covered her wedding expenses of $45,000, and provided the down payment for her house, another $60,000. Meanwhile, I had accumulated crushing student debt, worked multiple jobs throughout college, and was repeatedly told there was no money available when I asked for help. When I could not afford to attend Sarah's destination wedding, my parents expressed disappointment in my lack of family commitment rather than offering assistance. The most devastating document was an email chain between my parents and Sarah. In these messages, they discussed how to manage Rebecca's expectations and agreed that Sarah was the more responsible investment for the family's financial future. One email from Sarah particularly stung. "Thanks for covering the house down payment. I promise Becca will never find out about any of this. She would just waste the money anyway, like she always does." My hands shook as I photographed every document with my phone. The pattern of deception was overwhelming. Family dinners where Sarah casually mentioned her good fortune and smart financial planning now made sickening sense. She had not earned her success through intelligence and hard work alone. She had been systematically supported while I was left to struggle. The emotional manipulation was equally devastating. My parents had consistently praised Sarah's achievements while subtly undermining my confidence. They questioned my career choices, criticized my financial decisions, and made me feel like a burden whenever I needed help. Now I understood this was deliberate conditioning to prevent me from questioning the disparity in our circumstances. But the cruelest revelation was yet to come. Hidden in the back of the folder was a handwritten note from my grandmother, clearly intended for me. "My dearest Rebecca, this inheritance is meant to give you the freedom to pursue your artistic dreams without financial worry. Your creativity has always been your greatest gift, and I want you to have the security to nurture it." Grandmother Martinez had specifically wanted to support my artistic career. She believed in my talent when my own family did not. The inheritance was not just money. It was validation, love, and faith in my potential. My family had stolen not just my financial security, but my grandmother's final gift of encouragement. As I sat in Dad's office surrounded by evidence of my family's betrayal, a cold fury replaced my initial shock. This was not just about money. This was about systematic emotional abuse, financial fraud, and the destruction of my trust in the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. I carefully returned the documents to their original positions, my mind racing with possibilities. For the first time in my adult life, I held real power in this family dynamic. The question was how to use it. That night I researched inheritance law and discovered that my parents' actions constituted criminal fraud. They had violated the explicit terms of a legal will and committed felony theft. Sarah, as a knowing beneficiary of stolen funds, was equally culpable. But I wanted more than legal justice. I wanted them to experience the same humiliation, financial stress, and family rejection they had subjected me to for years. I wanted them to understand what it felt like to be the family disappointment, to have their carefully constructed image destroyed in front of everyone who mattered to them. The plan that began forming in my mind was elaborate, methodical, and designed to expose their hypocrisy in the most public way possible. They had taught me that family loyalty was paramount, except when it was inconvenient for them. Now they would learn that betrayal has consequences, and some family bonds once broken by greed and deception can never be repaired. The Martinez family annual reunion was scheduled for 3 weeks after my discovery. Extended family from across the country would gather at my Uncle Robert's ranch in Texas, the perfect stage for my carefully orchestrated revelation. But first, I needed to build my case methodically and gather allies who would ensure my family could not simply dismiss or gaslight their way out of accountability. I started with my cousin David, Uncle Robert's son, and a practicing attorney. David had always been the family truth-teller, unafraid to call out hypocrisy when he saw it. I arranged to meet him for coffee in his downtown office, bringing copies of all the incriminating documents. His reaction exceeded my expectations. "Rebecca, this is absolutely criminal fraud," he said, studying the bank statements with professional intensity. "Your parents violated federal inheritance laws and committed felony theft. Sarah received stolen property and participated in ongoing conspiracy to defraud you." David's legal expertise gave weight to my accusations. He explained that the statute of limitations had not expired, and I could pursue both criminal charges and civil recovery. More importantly, he agreed to serve as my witness and legal counsel during the family confrontation. Next, I reached out to my Aunt Carmen, grandmother Martinez's daughter, and the family historian. Carmen had always felt protective of grandmother's legacy and maintained detailed records of family finances and important documents. When I showed her the evidence, her face transformed with righteous anger. "Your grandmother specifically told me about that inheritance," Carmen revealed. "She was worried about your struggling finances and wanted to ensure you had security. She made me promise to check that you received it properly." Carmen had been calling my parents for years asking about the inheritance distribution, only to be told that everything was handled according to Maria's wishes. Carmen possessed additional evidence I had not known existed. Grandmother Martinez had confided her concerns about my parents' favoritism toward Sarah, and had specifically structured the inheritance to prevent manipulation. She had also kept copies of all estate documents, including her handwritten note expressing her desire to support my artistic career. My third ally emerged unexpectedly. My cousin Elena, Sarah's former college roommate, reached out after hearing through family gossip that I was asking questions about finances. Elena revealed that Sarah had confessed the truth during a drunken conversation years earlier, including details about how my parents had justified the theft. "Sarah said your parents convinced her that you would just waste the money on frivolous art supplies, and that she deserved it more because she was building a real career," Elena explained. She also mentioned that they made her promise never to tell you because it would destroy the family harmony. Elena provided text message evidence of Sarah's confession and agreed to testify to what she had heard. Her testimony was crucial because it proved premeditation and ongoing conspiracy rather than a simple misunderstanding. Armed with legal documentation, witness testimony, and additional evidence, I prepared for the family reunion confrontation. But I wanted maximum impact, so I coordinated with David to ensure the revelation would be legally documented and impossible to dismiss. The reunion began typically with my parents proudly showcasing Sarah's latest promotion and her husband's business success. Extended family members praised Sarah's financial wisdom and responsible planning, while making subtle digs about my bohemian lifestyle and impractical career choices. I waited until the traditional family dinner on Saturday evening when all 37 family members were gathered around Uncle Robert's massive dining table. During the customary toast honoring Grandmother Martinez's memory, I stood to speak. I want to share something important about Grandmother's legacy. I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. 5 years ago, she left an inheritance specifically designed to support both Sarah and me equally. Tonight, I want to honor her true wishes by revealing how that inheritance was actually distributed. The room fell silent as I began distributing copies of the bank statements, legal documents, and email evidence to each family member. Uncle Robert's face darkened as he read the papers while Aunt Carmen nodded grimly, already knowing what was coming. My parents and Sarah stole my inheritance, I announced clearly. $250,000 that Grandmother specifically intended to split equally between her granddaughters was given entirely to Sarah. Additionally, my parents have secretly funded Sarah's education, wedding, and house purchase while repeatedly telling me there was no money available for my needs. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Uncle Robert demanded explanations while Aunt Carmen shared Grandmother's original intentions. My parents attempted to justify their actions, claiming they were protecting the family's financial interests and that I was too irresponsible to handle inheritance money. Sarah tried to minimize her involvement, claiming she had assumed the inheritance was legitimately hers. But Elena stood up and recounted Sarah's drunken confession, including her knowledge of the theft and her agreement to keep it secret. David, in his capacity as family legal counsel, explained the criminal nature of their actions and announced his intention to file formal charges if restitution was not immediately arranged. The legal threat transformed family disappointment into genuine panic. But the most devastating moment came when I read Grandmother's handwritten note aloud. Her words about supporting my artistic dreams and believing in my creativity moved several family members to tears. Uncle Robert, who had always respected his mother-in-law's judgment, looked at my parents with undisguised disgust. Maria specifically wanted to encourage Rebecca's art, he said firmly. You have dishonored her memory and betrayed her trust. The family gathering that had begun as Sarah's celebration ended with my parents' complete humiliation and the destruction of their carefully maintained image as fair and loving parents. The immediate aftermath of my family reunion revelation created shockwaves that extended far beyond that single evening. What I had not anticipated was how quickly the story would spread through our extended family network, creating a cascade of consequences that would fundamentally reshape our family dynamics forever. Within 48 hours of the reunion, I received calls from family members across the country. My great-aunt Sophia, Grandmother Martinez's eldest sister, called from Phoenix with additional shocking information. She revealed that my parents had also borrowed $15,000 from her 2 years earlier, claiming it was for my emergency medical expenses after a supposed accident. I had never been in an accident, and I had never received any medical assistance from my family. They showed me fake hospital bills and everything, Aunt Sophia explained, her voice trembling with anger. I gave them that money because I thought my great-niece was suffering, to discover it was all lies. She trailed off, too disgusted to continue. This revelation prompted other family members to examine their own interactions with my parents more critically. Uncle Jorge from California discovered that my parents had convinced him not to offer me a job at his successful restaurant chain 3 years earlier, claiming I was unreliable and going through personal problems. In reality, I had desperately needed stable employment and had never been given the opportunity to even interview. My second cousin Maria, a successful real estate agent, revealed that she had offered to help me find affordable housing 2 years earlier. But my parents had intercepted her call and told her I was handling things independently and did not need assistance. I had been struggling with expensive rent payments and living in a cramped studio apartment while unaware that family help was available. The pattern became clear. My parents had systematically isolated me from family support systems while portraying themselves as my primary advocates. They had created a narrative where they were the long-suffering parents dealing with a difficult, irresponsible daughter, when in reality they were sabotaging my opportunities for independence and success. David suggested we document every instance of fraud and deception for potential legal action. As family members shared their stories, the scope of my parents' manipulation became staggering. They had not only stolen my inheritance, but had actively undermined my relationship's career prospects and financial stability for years. But the most powerful ally emerged from an unexpected source. My cousin Patricia, a forensic accountant who specialized in family financial disputes, offered to conduct a comprehensive audit of my parents' finances. What she discovered exceeded our worst expectations. Patricia's investigation revealed that my parents had been systematically exploiting family relationships for financial gain. They had borrowed money from 7 different relatives over the past 6 years, using fabricated emergencies and exaggerated hardships to secure loans they never intended to repay. The total amount exceeded $60,000. More disturbing was their method of emotional manipulation. Patricia found email evidence showing how my parents researched each family member's personal vulnerabilities and crafted specific appeals designed to trigger maximum sympathy and financial generosity. They had exploited Uncle Robert's guilt about not visiting grandmother more often, Aunt Carmen's concerns about family unity, and various cousins' desire to help during supposed crisis situations. Sarah's involvement was deeper than initially revealed. Bank records showed she had helped launder some of the borrowed money through her accounts, making it appear as legitimate business transactions, rather than family loans. She had also provided false references for my parents when they applied for credit vouching for their financial stability, while knowing they had no intention of repaying their debts. The most devastating discovery was a secret savings account my parents maintained funded entirely by money stolen from family members. This account contained over $40,000, money they had accumulated while claiming financial hardship and accepting assistance from relatives who genuinely believed they were struggling. Patricia's investigation also revealed the true extent of Sarah's financial benefits. Beyond the inheritance theft and obvious support, my parents had been paying her credit card bills, car insurance, and even her grocery expenses for years. The total financial support Sarah had received exceeded $400,000, making her lifestyle completely dependent on stolen family money. But Patricia uncovered something even more sinister, evidence that my parents were planning to repeat their inheritance theft when Uncle Robert passed away. Email discussions revealed their strategy to convince Uncle Robert to modify his will, positioning Sarah as the responsible family member who should inherit his substantial ranch property. Armed with Patricia's forensic evidence, David expanded our legal strategy beyond simple inheritance recovery. We now had grounds for extensive fraud charges, conspiracy allegations, and civil recovery that could result in significant financial penalties and potential criminal sentences. However, I wanted more than legal victory. I wanted complete exposure of their systematic manipulation and the destruction of their ability to continue exploiting family relationships. Patricia suggested we present our findings to the entire extended family, simultaneously creating maximum accountability and preventing any possibility of continued deception. We planned a second family gathering, this time explicitly focused on financial accountability and family integrity. David sent formal legal notices to all involved parties, while Patricia prepared comprehensive financial presentations showing the full scope of fraud and manipulation. But as we prepared for this confrontational meeting, I received an unexpected phone call that would change everything. Elena, who had been monitoring Sarah's social media activity, discovered that Sarah and my parents were planning a counterattack designed to discredit my accusations and restore their family standing. According to Elena's intelligence, they were preparing to claim that I had mental health issues, was fabricating evidence out of jealousy, and was attempting to destroy family relationships for personal gain. They had even consulted with a lawyer about filing defamation charges against me and claiming that my accusations constituted harassment. This information transformed our strategy from simple exposure to defensive preparation. We needed to ensure our evidence was legally bulletproof and that their counterattack would backfire spectacularly. David began preparing for potential legal challenges, while Patricia strengthened her financial documentation. But the most crucial element was building an unshakable alliance of family members who would stand with me regardless of my parents' manipulation attempts. This required individual conversations with each relative, showing them the complete evidence and ensuring they understood the broader pattern of exploitation. The battle lines were drawn for a confrontation that would determine not just my financial recovery, but the future integrity of our entire family structure. The planned family meeting was scheduled for the following month, but 3 days before the gathering, I received a devastating phone call from David that shattered my confidence and nearly destroyed my case entirely. His voice was strained and apologetic as he delivered news that felt like a physical blow. "Rebecca, I need to tell you something that changes everything," he began hesitantly. "I have been contacted by your parents' attorney, and there are complications with our legal strategy that I did not anticipate." My stomach dropped as he explained that my parents had hired a prominent family law firm and were prepared to file countercharges against me for theft of family documents, harassment, and defamation. But the real devastation came with his next revelation. "They also have evidence that some of the documents you discovered may have been legally justified under powers of attorney that your grandmother signed before her death," David continued. "If those powers of attorney are legitimate, your parents may have had legal authority to manage the inheritance distribution as they saw fit." The room spun around me as David explained that my parents claimed to possess additional estate documents that I had not found, including a medical power of attorney signed by Grandmother Martinez during her final illness. According to their attorney, this document gave my parents discretionary authority over inheritance distribution based on their assessment of each beneficiary's financial responsibility and life stability. But David's next words delivered the killing blow. "Rebecca, I also need to disclose that my law firm has represented your parents in previous legal matters. There is a potential conflict of interest that my partners have identified, and I may not be able to continue representing you in this case." The betrayal was staggering. David, whom I had trusted implicitly, and who had seemed genuinely outraged by my parents' fraud, was now backing away from my case at the most crucial moment. Whether his retreat was motivated by legal ethics, financial pressure, or family politics, the result was the same: I was losing my most credible ally just as the battle was intensifying. Worse still, David's withdrawal gave credibility to my parents' narrative that my accusations were unfounded and vindictive. If my own lawyer cousin was distancing himself from the case, other family members might conclude that my evidence was weak, or that I was indeed fabricating claims out of jealousy. The situation deteriorated further when Patricia called with equally devastating news. Her forensic investigation had encountered a significant obstacle that threatened to undermine our entire case. During her analysis of bank records, she had discovered that some of the financial transfers I had identified as fraudulent were actually documented as legitimate family loans with signed agreements. "Your parents are claiming that much of the money Sarah received was actually loans that she has been repaying through a complex arrangement involving business investments and shared property ownership," Patricia explained. "They have documentation showing loan agreements, payment schedules, and even collateral arrangements." According to Patricia's findings, my parents had created an elaborate paper trail that could potentially justify their financial decisions. Sarah's house purchase, education funding, and wedding expenses were all documented as family investment strategies rather than outright gifts. The documentation was sophisticated enough to withstand casual legal scrutiny. But the most devastating blow came from an unexpected source. Elena, who had been my crucial witness regarding Sarah's confession, called with news that destroyed my case's credibility entirely. "Rebecca, I am so sorry, but I cannot testify about Sarah's confession," Elena said tearfully. "My family is threatening to cut me off financially if I get involved in this legal battle. My parents co-signed my student loans, and they are saying they will withdraw their support if I participate in what they are calling a family destruction campaign." Elena's withdrawal was catastrophic because her testimony was the only direct evidence of Sarah's knowledge and intentional participation in the fraud. Without her witness statement, Sarah could claim complete ignorance of any wrongdoing and portray herself as an innocent beneficiary who had trusted her parents' financial guidance. The loss of Elena's testimony also undermined the credibility of other family members who had shared stories of my parents' manipulation. If Elena was reluctant to testify under legal pressure, other relatives might also withdraw their support, rather than risk family conflict or potential legal retaliation. As my alliance crumbled, my parents launched their promised counterattack with devastating effectiveness. They began calling family members individually, expressing concern about my mental health crisis and claiming that my accusations were symptoms of a psychological breakdown brought on by professional and financial failures. Their narrative was insidious and carefully crafted. They portrayed themselves as loving parents who had tried to support both daughters equally, but who had been forced to make difficult decisions based on each daughter's demonstrated responsibility and stability. Sarah's success was presented as evidence of wise family investment, while my struggles were attributed to poor decision-making and an inability to accept personal responsibility. Most damaging was their claim that my grandmother had specifically expressed concerns about my financial judgment before her death. According to my parents, Grandmother Martinez had requested that any inheritance be managed carefully to prevent me from wasting the money on impractical dreams. They presented this narrative as loving protection rather than betrayal. The psychological manipulation was expertly executed. My parents leveraged their decades of family relationships and their reputation as responsible, caring individuals to make my accusations seem like the desperate lies of an unstable person. Family members who had initially expressed outrage began questioning whether they had fully understood the situation. Uncle Robert, who had been one of my strongest supporters, called to express concern about my emotional state and suggested that I consider family counseling rather than legal action. Aunt Carmen, despite her initial anger, began questioning whether she had misunderstood grandmother's intentions. Within 2 weeks of David's withdrawal, my entire case appeared to be collapsing. The family members who had promised to stand with me were retreating. My legal representation was compromised, and my parents had successfully shifted the narrative from their fraud to my supposed instability. I found myself more isolated than ever before, facing the possibility that my attempt to expose the truth had only resulted in complete family rejection and the destruction of my remaining relationships. My parents had not only stolen my inheritance, but had successfully convinced the family that I was the real problem. But in my darkest moment of defeat, when it seemed that justice would never prevail, and that my parents would escape consequences for their systematic fraud, an unexpected phone call would change everything and provide me with the most powerful ally I could have imagined. 3 days after my case seemed completely destroyed, I received a phone call that would resurrect my fight for justice and expose my parents' deception more thoroughly than I had ever imagined possible. The caller introduced herself as Margaret Thompson, an estate planning attorney who had represented my grandmother during the final years of her life. "Miss Martinez, I have been following the legal discussions surrounding your grandmother's estate through professional networks," Margaret explained in a crisp, authoritative voice. "I believe there are significant misrepresentations being made about your grandmother's intentions and the legal documents involved in her estate planning. Margaret revealed that she had maintained detailed records of all her interactions with grandmother Martinez, including audio recordings of estate planning discussions that were made with my grandmother's explicit consent for legal protection purposes. These recordings would prove to be the smoking gun that would destroy my parents' entire defense strategy. Your grandmother was very specific about her concerns regarding your parents' treatment of you, Margaret continued. She came to my office multiple times expressing worry about the financial favoritism she observed and her desire to ensure you received equal treatment. She explicitly rejected any suggestion of conditional inheritance or parental oversight. The recordings Margaret possessed were devastating to my parents' claims. In crystal clear audio, Grandmother Martinez could be heard rejecting my parents' suggestions about managed distribution and insisting that both granddaughters receive their inheritances directly upon reaching age 25 with no parental involvement or oversight. More importantly, the recordings captured Grandmother Martinez discussing her awareness of my parents' favoritism and her specific intention to counteract it through her estate planning. She had deliberately structured the inheritance to provide me with financial independence precisely because she recognized my family's unequal treatment. But Margaret's most explosive revelation concerned the power of attorney documents my parents claimed gave them discretionary authority over inheritance distribution. According to Margaret's records, my grandmother had specifically refused to sign such documents and had explicitly stated that she did not want my parents involved in inheritance decisions. The power of attorney your parents are claiming exists was never signed, Margaret explained. Your grandmother reviewed a draft of such a document and explicitly rejected it, stating that she did not trust your parents to treat both granddaughters fairly. I have her written instructions refusing to execute that document. Margaret's evidence completely demolished my parents' legal defense and exposed their document claims as outright fabrication. They had not only committed inheritance fraud, but had also created fraudulent legal documents to cover their theft. This elevated their crimes from family financial disputes to serious federal fraud charges. But Margaret brought even more devastating evidence. Her files contained correspondence between my grandmother and her financial advisor, explicitly documenting her concerns about my parents' spending habits and their requests for early access to estate funds. These letters revealed that my parents had been pressuring Grandmother Martinez for money during her lifetime requests she had consistently denied. The correspondence also revealed that my grandmother had specifically investigated my parents' financial situation and had discovered their pattern of borrowing money from family members without repaying loans. She had been aware of their financial manipulation and had deliberately excluded them from any estate management role to protect both granddaughters from their schemes. Margaret's most damaging evidence was a sealed letter my grandmother had left with her attorney to be opened only if questions arose about her estate intentions. The letter, written in grandmother's own handwriting and witnessed by Margaret's legal staff, contained explicit instructions about inheritance distribution and detailed explanations of her concerns about my parents' treatment of me. In the letter, Grandmother Martinez wrote, "I have watched my son and daughter-in-law consistently favor Sarah over Rebecca, providing financial support and opportunities to one granddaughter while denying equal assistance to the other. This inheritance is my attempt to correct this imbalance and ensure Rebecca has the security she deserves. Under no circumstances should my son or his wife have any control over how this money is distributed." The letter continued with specific instructions that no inheritance funds should be used to pay for Sarah's education, housing, or other expenses that had already been covered by my parents. Grandmother Martinez had intended for me to receive the full inheritance amount, plus accumulated interest, while Sarah should receive nothing because she had already benefited from family financial support that I had been denied. But Margaret's investigation uncovered an even more shocking truth. My grandmother had actually left a larger inheritance than the $250,000 I had discovered. The complete estate was worth over $400,000, with specific instructions that I should receive the majority share to compensate for years of financial discrimination. Margaret's evidence also revealed that my parents had forged my grandmother's signature on bank documents to gain access to estate funds. Handwriting analysis commissioned by Margaret's firm proved that key signatures on financial transfer documents were fraudulent, adding federal document fraud charges to their growing list of crimes. Armed with Margaret's irrefutable evidence, I now possessed the legal firepower to not only recover my stolen inheritance, but to pursue serious criminal charges against my parents and Sarah. Margaret agreed to represent me personally and to coordinate with federal prosecutors who expressed interest in the case due to the sophisticated nature of the fraud scheme. But Margaret brought something even more valuable than legal evidence. She provided me with a detailed understanding of my grandmother's true feelings about our family dynamics. Through their recorded conversations, I learned that Grandmother Martinez had recognized my artistic talent, appreciated my independence, and worried constantly about my parents' emotional manipulation. "Your grandmother spoke about you with tremendous pride and concern," Margaret explained. "She saw your creativity as a gift and wanted to ensure you had the freedom to pursue your artistic dreams without financial pressure. She was particularly angry about your parents' criticism of your career choices and wanted her inheritance to validate your path." Learning about my grandmother's genuine love and support healed emotional wounds I had carried for years. I had not been wrong about the family favoritism, and I had not been unreasonable to expect equal treatment. My grandmother had seen the same patterns I experienced and had taken specific legal action to address them. Margaret's evidence also provided leverage against the family members who had withdrawn their support after my parents' counterattack. Faced with irrefutable proof of fraud and criminal activity, relatives who had questioned my accusations now returned to offer assistance and testimony. David, whose law firm withdrawal had seemed like a devastating betrayal, contacted me to explain that his partners had been pressured by my parents' attorney, but that he personally believed my case was legitimate. While he could not represent me directly due to conflict of interest rules, he offered to provide informal guidance and to testify about the evidence he had reviewed. But the most satisfying reversal came from Elena, who called to apologize for her earlier withdrawal and to offer even stronger testimony than before. Learning about the criminal nature of my parents' actions had convinced her family that supporting justice was more important than avoiding conflict. With Margaret's evidence, renewed family support, and a clear criminal case against my parents, I was finally positioned to seek not just financial recovery, but complete accountability for their systematic fraud and emotional abuse. The final confrontation came not in a family setting, but in a federal courthouse where my parents and Sarah faced criminal fraud charges that would forever destroy their carefully constructed facade of respectability and family virtue. Margaret had coordinated with federal prosecutors who viewed the case as an excellent example of sophisticated inheritance fraud that warranted serious legal consequences. The trial lasted 3 weeks and exposed every detail of my parents' systematic deception to public scrutiny. Local media covered the case extensively, fascinated by the story of family betrayal and financial manipulation that had extended over years and involved multiple victims. My parents, who had spent decades building their reputation as pillars of the community, watched helplessly as their crimes were dissected in humiliating detail. The evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. Margaret's audio recordings of my grandmother's estate planning discussions played in open court, revealing her explicit intentions and her concerns about my parents' favoritism. The forged signature analysis proved criminal document fraud, while Patricia's financial investigation demonstrated the scope of their theft and manipulation. Most devastating was the testimony from family members who described years of manipulation and fraudulent loan requests. Uncle Robert took the witness stand and emotionally described how my parents had exploited his grief over my grandmother's death to borrow money for fabricated emergencies. Aunt Sophia detailed the fake medical bills and manufactured crisis that had convinced her to provide $15,000 she would never recover. Sarah's involvement proved deeper than anyone had realized. Prosecutors revealed that she had not only known about the inheritance theft, but had actively participated in laundering stolen money through her business accounts. Her supposedly successful career was built entirely on financial fraud, with her MBA house wedding and ongoing lifestyle, all funded by theft from family members. The judge's sentencing reflected the severity of their crimes and the betrayal of family trust. My parents each received 18 months in federal prison plus 3 years of supervised probation, while Sarah received 12 months in extensive community service. More importantly, they were ordered to pay complete restitution totaling over $600,000, including the original inheritance, accumulated interest, and additional funds stolen from other family members. But the legal victory was only the beginning of my transformation and healing journey. The trial had exposed the truth about my family dynamics and validated years of pain and confusion I had experienced. I was not crazy jealous or irresponsible. I had been the victim of systematic abuse and financial exploitation by people who claimed to love me. The inheritance recovery, combined with the additional funds awarded through restitution, provided me with financial security I had never imagined possible. But more importantly, it gave me the freedom to pursue my artistic career without the constant stress and family criticism that had undermined my confidence for years. I used part of the inheritance money to establish a small art studio and gallery space, finally honoring my grandmother's dream of supporting my creativity. The gallery became a gathering place for other artists who had faced family disapproval or financial obstacles in pursuing their passions. I named it Maria's Place, in honor of my grandmother's memory and her belief in artistic expression. The trial and its aftermath also revealed who my true family really was. Uncle Robert, Aunt Carmen Patricia, and numerous cousins who had supported my fight for justice formed a chosen family that provided genuine love, encouragement, and mutual support. Margaret Thompson became not just my attorney, but a mentor and friend who helped me understand my legal rights and personal worth. Most surprisingly, several family members who had initially supported my parents reached out after the trial to apologize and to share their own experiences of manipulation and exploitation. I learned that my situation was not unique. My parents had targeted multiple family members over the years using emotional manipulation and fabricated crises to extract money and favors. Elena and I developed a deep friendship based on our shared understanding of family trauma and recovery. She had faced her own difficult decisions about loyalty versus justice, and our mutual support helped both of us heal from years of family dysfunction and manipulation. The most profound change was in my relationship with myself. For the first time in my adult life, I felt worthy of love, respect, and financial security. I stopped apologizing for my career choices, my artistic interests, and my independent lifestyle. I learned to set boundaries with family members and to recognize manipulation tactics that had controlled me for years. My parents' imprisonment and public disgrace created natural separation that allowed me to heal without ongoing interference or emotional abuse. When they were eventually released, they found themselves largely ostracized from the extended family and forced to rebuild their lives without the social support network they had exploited for so long. Sarah faced perhaps the most difficult consequences because her entire adult identity had been built on fraud and stolen success. Her marriage collapsed when her husband learned the truth about their financial foundation, and she was forced to sell her house and luxury possessions to pay restitution. Her corporate career ended when her employer discovered her involvement in criminal fraud, making future employment difficult. But perhaps the most satisfying consequence was watching my parents experience the same financial stress, family rejection, and social isolation they had subjected me to for years. They learned what it felt like to be the family disappointment, to have their credibility questioned, and to face life without the safety net of family support. The experience taught me that justice is not just about legal punishment, but about truth validation and the restoration of dignity. My grandmother's inheritance was never really about money. It was about love, belief in my potential, and recognition of my worth as a human being. Recovering that inheritance meant reclaiming my place in the family and my right to be treated with respect and equality. Today, I run a successful art gallery, Maintain healthy relationships with family members who value honesty and mutual support, and live free from the financial stress and emotional manipulation that defined my earlier life. I honor my grandmother's memory by supporting other young artists and by refusing to accept treatment that diminishes my worth or potential. This experience showed me that families are not just about blood relationships, but about mutual love, respect, and support. Sometimes the people who share your DNA are the ones who harm you most, while your true family consists of those who celebrate your successes, support your dreams, and stand by you when facing difficult truths. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and personal justice? When blood relatives betrayed your trust and stole your future, did you find the courage to fight back, or did you let family pressure convince you to stay silent? Share your stories in the comments below. Your experiences might help someone else recognize manipulation and find the strength to seek justice. If this story of family revenge and ultimate vindication resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family betrayal and building chosen families based on genuine love and respect. Share this video with anyone who needs encouragement to stand up against family exploitation. And remember that your worth is not determined by others' treatment of you. Thank you for watching my journey from family victim to empowered survivor, and may you find the courage to choose justice over fake loyalty when your family's true colors are revealed.